Hello, Infiniteers! Sorry for the delay in getting this next episode out. I've been out of town for the past couple of weeks, but I'm back now, and today we're going to start working on the logic for the main mission in my Bazaar toy box. We'll do most of the logic for the city portion of the mission today, and then next time we'll do the logic for Patch 4, where the player finally acquires the TIE Fighters and flies off to the Imperial Armada. Now, this is probably going to be a longer episode than usual, so to save some time, I've already done about an hour of prep work. But don't let that worry you. I'm not going to skip anything. All I've done is place the Creativitoys ahead of time, so you don't have to watch me scroll through the toy drawers. And I've made some basic connections for locators, which you don't need to see me do over and over again, because that would be boring to watch. I've also configured the waves on the enemy wave generators, so you don't have to watch me scroll through those lists. And I've set the properties on some of the Creativitoys, so you don't have to watch me do that either. And I want to focus mainly on the flow of the logic for the main mission, so you can see how it all works. But let me start by showing you everything I've done so far. And if you're going to build this toy box on your own system, you can pause the video along the way and copy what I've got so you can catch up to me. And if you're not sure how I did some of the things I've done, you should check out my toy box tutorial series, which shows you how to do all of these basic things. So to begin with, out of the gameplay toys drawer, I've placed 2 vehicle summoners. And I've also placed the sound generator, sound effects object. Okay. And most everything else I've placed is out of the Creativitoys drawer. So I've got a button, which I'm not sure we're going to do anything with today. I've got a dynamic trigger and a radar marker. I have 2 locators I've placed, and notice the orientation of these. So they're lined up with the center of the hallway over there and with the supports over there. And notice the direction that the blue dot is facing on each one. This one is facing out into space. This one is facing in. This is where we're going to place the Millennium Falcon. And you don't really need to worry about that if you're on a system with enough memory, but since I'm on the Wii U, I want to do everything I can to save memory. And so I'm going to show you the way I did it, and you can decide if you want to just put the Millennium Falcon directly in here or not. I've also got a replayer and a logic gate. Over here we have a friend generator, and again these are all out of the Creativitoys drawer. We have another dynamic trigger and a radar marker. We have a dynamic trigger area, that I've placed here like you see. And this is just placing it directly from the Creativitoys into here. I've got another another trigger area that I've placed in here, and I put it in the back corner of this little area and stretched it to fill across the entire space, so it fills this entire room. We also have a locator in here with the dot facing toward the starting hangar bay. And I've got a logic gate up here. Out here we have another trigger area right inside this doorway with another logic gate. Alright, up here we have a locator, an enemy wave generator, and a radar marker. And I've got those same 3 controls in 4 other places. So over here we have another set with the locator, radar marker, and enemy wave generator. We have another set of those 3 controls over here. And you'll notice I've made some connections there. I'll show you what I've done in a little bit. We have another set over here. Again, a locator, enemy wave generator, and a radar marker. And we've got another set over here. So 5 sets of these 3 controls. And then we have a logic gate, a collectible tracker, a replayer, and a randomizer. Down here on the main floor, I've got some locators that I've placed with an enemy wave generator. And that's connected to those 3 locators, as well as 2 locators over here. And the little blue dots on these 2 are facing that way, as you see. This one's facing that way, as well as this one. And this one facing the other way. We have another enemy wave generator here connected to those locators. And that's where those are placed. And then down in this little room over here, we have a townsperson that I'll show you in a moment. We have a radar marker, a dynamic trigger, a text displayer, 2 time delayers, another dynamic trigger and a time delayer, an enemy wave generator connected to those locators there. And the exact placement on these locators doesn't really matter, by the way. I'm just showing you which way the blue dot is facing on all of these. And let me give you a little bit more of a bird's eye view so you can see where those are. And then over here we have an ability terminal, another locator, the dot there doesn't matter, and a radar marker. The townsperson, this guy is out of the Disney Infinity 3.0 playset people. He's the male Coruscant Citizen 1. He's the closest thing that matches Orion Ferret from the comics, and so that's why I chose him. He's from the Twilight of the Republic playset. And on him, I can select him. Might have to get in here and use the magic wand. That's so annoying. I've set the properties on this guy so that he stands still. Okay. And we'll get rid of that wand. All right. Since we're in this room, as I mentioned, I've connected all of those locators up with the new locator connection. And I've configured the wave with 2 Mandalorians and 3 long-range Nikto thugs. I've also set the properties as you see here. The first 2 locators I connected were this one and this one. And then I connected these other 3. And what that means is since the wave is configured with the 2 Mandalorians first, they'll spawn at these 2 locators here. All right. This one, again, is connected to those 4 locators, and the wave on this one is configured with 4 long-range Nikto thugs. Properties are set the same way as the other enemy wave generator that you saw. And this one, connected to those 5 locators, wave is configured with 5 long-range Nikto thugs. Properties are set the same way as those others. Okay. And now, I think I'm going to wait on these and show you those a little bit later. All right. We also have a target camera up here. This is placed directly over that little decoration down there lined up with the center of the stairs. And I've placed a little helper block in here out of the blocks drawer just to show you how high this camera is. So now that you've seen that, I can delete that block. This is connected to a locator. If I can get up here. Or no, I haven't connected that yet. New locator connection. I've connected it to a locator over here. And this is set up right at the bottom of the stairs, even with the platform over there and centered on the stairs. Alright, and that is just about everything that I've done so far, except for these controls, which I'll cover later. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is when the player leaves this hangar bay and enters this little room over here to talk to Lando, we want to put up a force field around this hangar bay to keep them from the Falcon. And we're going to do that with a replayer. And so we're going to set the properties on our replayer so the playback interval is 0. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a block out of the blocks drawer. And we're going to use this large block wall. And this is going to end up sitting in here like that. I'm just going to drop a temporary one here first. And I want to set the theme for the blocks. If we go to the right, there's a hologram theme. I'm going to set that to be my theme. Make sure you set that to be your theme so every block you drop will use this theme. I'm going to wait for it to update. There it goes. And now that we've done that, we can delete that block. Okay, so coming out of the editor, we're going to go step on our replayer, which opens the menu in the lower right. On my Wii U, I press B to start recording. I got to step off to get back into the editor. And now we're going to place our force field block right up here, covering up the tunnel entrance. And then I will exit. Once again, we'll step on the replayer, press B to stop recording, and I'm going to press A to clear. Make sure you press A only once. All right. And there we go. So what we're going to do is when the player passes through this trigger area down here, we want to put the force field up. And so on this trigger area, we're going to do a new logic connection when entered by player any. We're going to come to our replayer, and we're going to do a playback. And I'd like to play a sound effect with that. So on that trigger area, new logic connection when entered by player any. Come over here to our sound generator, and out of the action category, we're going to play force field power up. And on the properties for this sound generator, I want to make sure we turn off 3D sound at speaker or locator. Alright, and we only want to do this one time. So on the trigger area here, new logic connection when entered by player any, we'll come up to this logic gate up here and input. And on that logic gate, a new logic connection on output. We want to deactivate that trigger area. So that will put the force field up. Okay, next thing we need is our mission giver. And we could just put Lando in here directly, but again, I need to save some memory. And so for that, we're going to use a friend generator. And we're going to tie these two to that. So on the friend generator, we're going to do a new locator connection. And I want to place Lando in this central room up ahead, right at that locator. That'll be our generation location. And on the properties for this, all of the defaults are basically fine. You can set the behavior if you want, but because Lando is a cast member, he's not going to stand still or do anything else that you tell him to. So you can just leave all those properties because they're not going to matter. And we're going to use the level starter so that when the level begins, we're going to put Lando right in the toy box. So we'll do a new logic connection on the level starter on Catalyze. Come over here. And in the Rise Against the Empire set, we're going to select Lando Calrissian. That'll place him at that locator out there. And then we need a radar marker on him. So we'll do a new actor connection on this radar marker. Connect that to the friend generator. And on this, we're going to set the beacon type to be a yellow exclamation point. Beacon location will be the connected actor. Active will be on by default. Okay. And we'll need a dynamic trigger for him, so on this, we'll do a new actor connection on that as well and connect to the friend generator. And I'm using the friend generator, not the friendly wave generator, because friendly wave generators are assumed to generate a wave containing more than one enemy, and this will not work with multiple actors. The dynamic trigger only works with a single actor. So as long as you only generate one item or one enemy or one townsperson from a friend generator, this will work. So make sure you're using a friend generator, not a friendly wave generator. On our dynamic trigger, under the properties, we're going to set the target to be the connected actor. And the trigger distance, I'm going to set this to be 6. Okay. So when the player approaches Lando, and they enter this radius around Lando, which is what this dynamic trigger sets up, we're going to do a couple of things. So on this dynamic trigger, a new logic connection when entered by player any. First thing I want to do is deactivate the radar marker. And when that's deactivated, we want to turn off our dynamic trigger because we only want to do this one time. So we turn that off. Also, when the player enters the area around Lando, so when entered by player any, we want to turn on our next radar marker, which is going to be over at Orion Ferret, because we're directing the player down this way. And I haven't configured this one yet, but this is the one we're going to turn on. Okay. And then we're also going to make a connection to our text displayer, so I should show you the properties on that. This is set to text duration 3, and text style is banner. Okay. So back over here to the starting hangar. To our dynamic trigger. We do a new logic connection when entered by player any. And we're going to reuse the text displayer. And I put this down by Orion Ferret because that's where most of the text displayer connections are going to be made. So we connect up to our text displayer. And under here, we're going to go to the Start category. And Lando's going to say, let's get started. So like that lets the player know that's how we start. Okay. And we're almost done with our initial stuff in the hangar bay. The next thing I want to do is put the Falcon in here. And if you wanted to, if you're on a PS4 or a system with a lot of memory, you can just come down to flying vehicles and drop the Falcon in here and be done. But you see where the memory meter is on my Wii U on the right. It's kind of starting to climb up there, so I don't want to just have this thing in here. Most of the time the player is not even going to be in this room or even see this, so it's kind of useful not to use up that memory. And so for that I'm going to use a vehicle summoner, and I'm going to use 2 of them. So the first vehicle summoner, we're going to connect that up to this locator. So it looks like the Falcon has just landed. That's why that little dot on the locator is facing inward. This one, we're going to face it the other way. This is going to be when we come back to the hangar bay. And that one's facing outward, ready to launch. So on our level starter, we're going to do a new logic connection on Catalyze. We're going to come over to our very first vehicle summoner here. We're going to go into Rise Against the Empire and select the Millennium Falcon. So when the toy box loads, it's going to put the Millennium Falcon at this locator, facing that direction. And by the way, the properties on here, all the defaults are fine. None of these are going to come into play. Okay, so with the Falcon sitting here at the start, once the player leaves this area, we want to take that out to conserve memory. And we're going to do that with the trigger area that is over here at the entrance to the city. So this trigger area. So on this one, we're going to do a new logic connection when entered by player any. We're going to do a couple of things here. First thing we'll do is take the Millennium Falcon out. So Rise Against the Empire, or nope, sorry, remove all. Because more than likely the player's not going to wander back this way. The other thing we'll do is take Lando out, because the player is going on with the mission and Lando's just wandering around over here using up memory and doing nothing. So on this trigger area, when entered by player any, we're going to come over to our friend generator, and we're going to do a remove all on that as well, and that will take Lando out. Okay. And again, we only want to do this once, so new logic connection when entered by player any. Again, this is on that trigger area. We'll come over to this logic gate and input. And on this logic gate, a new logic connection on output. We'll turn around and close that, or deactivate that trigger area. So we only do that one time. And the last thing we want to do with this is generate our initial enemies. So they're entering this area, so we want to kick off the enemy wave generator. So a new logic connection when entered by player any will generate the wave for these enemies. And when this wave is defeated, new logic connection when the wave is defeated, then we'll kick off the wave generation for this wave generator. And I'm not going to put all of them in here. That would be 9 enemies. We'll just do them in stages. So these 5 and then 4 more over there. And that leaves me the resources to be able to add some townspeople in here, because these streets are kind of barren. But we're not going to do that today. We'll do that at a future time. Alright, so that takes care of everything down here at the hangar bay for the start of the mission. Alright, so the next part of this takes place down here in this little back alley room where we have Orion Ferret. So what we want to do is we want to connect up our townsperson there as a mission giver. So we're going to do a new actor connection on this radar marker. And I did this building this. This was not this difficult to hook up. Alright, let me cancel out of that. We're going to have to use the magic wand to do this. Alright, so magic wand. New actor connection to that elusive guy. We're going to connect him as our actor. And while we're right here, we're going to do the same thing with these two dynamic triggers. So a new actor connection. Connect it to that guy. New actor connection. Again, connect it to that guy. Alright. And now we're done with the wand. I much prefer working in spark mode. It's a little faster. Okay, so on this radar marker, we'll set the properties. So the beacon type is going to be a yellow arrow. Beacon location will be the connected actor. The rest of those are fine. On this dynamic trigger, for the properties, the target needs to be the connected actor. Trigger distance is going to be 6. Same thing with this one. Target is the connected actor. Trigger distance is 6. Alright. So this trigger area will handle the case where Orion Ferret, the player approaches Orion Ferret the first time. And when they do that, we got several things we want to do. He's going to say 3 lines, and then the enemies are going to ambush the player. So on this first dynamic trigger, we're going to do a new logic connection. When entered by player, any, we'll turn off this radar marker because we don't need that. And we can also use this radar marker when it's deactivated to turn around and turn this dynamic trigger off, because again, we only want to do this once. On that dynamic trigger, a new logic connection when entered by player, any. The first line he's going to say is going to be under the greetings category. And he's going to say, there you are. And now I want him to say 2 more lines after that. So that's why we have 2 text displayers. And in the properties for this, I set the time interval on the text displayer to be 3 seconds. So for this first time delayer, this will be 3 seconds. So after that first message vanishes, the second time delayer we're going to set to 6. So this will go off after the second message goes away. So on our dynamic trigger, a new logic connection when entered by player, any, we'll start this time delayer. And on this time delayer, new logic connection when the delay is completed, we'll have it display his next line, which is going to be under the loss category. And he's going to say, don't feel bad, which is right there. And then on the dynamic trigger, new logic connection when entered by player, any. We'll start the other time delayer. So when the player enters the area around Orion Ferret, we're displaying the first message and then kicking off these 2 time delayers for the second and third messages. So on this time delayer here, new logic connection when the delay is completed, we'll display our third and final message. And this is going to be again under the loss category. And this time he's going to say, it can't always go your way. And at this point, we also want to kick off the enemy wave generation. So on here, we're going to do a new logic connection. When the delay is completed, we'll kick off the wave generator. All right. And that's everything for the first dynamic trigger for our mission giver. So now the player is going to fight these enemies, and when the enemies are defeated, that will kick off our mission giver over there for a second time. So on the enemy wave generator, a new logic connection. When the wave is defeated, we want to turn this radar marker back on. And a new logic connection. When the wave is defeated, we need a second dynamic trigger for this because the behavior for this is going to be different than it was for the first ton. So that's why we cannot reuse this. We need a second one. So we're going to turn this one on. And we want this one off by default, because we don't need both of those active at the same time. So we're going to come back over here to our level starter. New logic connection on catalyze. And we're going to go turn off that second dynamic trigger, because we don't want both of these activating the first time the player approaches Orion Ferret. This one should only activate after we've defeated the enemies. So the level starter needs to turn that one off. So defeating the enemies will turn that on. So when the player comes back over to Orion Ferret, that's when this one is going to activate. Okay? And so on this dynamic trigger, new logic connection when entered by player any. Again, we will turn off this radar marker. And on the radar marker, new logic connection, when that's deactivated, we'll turn this one off as well. Now, when the player first approaches Orion Ferret, and this dynamic trigger is activated, that will deactivate this, and this is now going to deactivate both this one and this one. This is already inactive, so that's not going to be a problem. Okay, so on this dynamic trigger, the second one, new logic connection, when entered by player any, we'll come over to our text displayer, and under here, he's going to go under the negative category, and he's going to say, no more. I give up. And then I want him to say another thing, which is why we have another time delayer out here. So once again, we will set the time on this to be 3 seconds. And this will kick off that time delayer. So a new logic connection when entered by player any. Not only will it display the text for no more, but it'll kick off this time delayer so that 3 seconds later this will display the next message. So on the time delayer, new logic connection when the delay is completed. We'll come over here, and under this one, we're going to go to the missions category. And he's going to say, I have a mission for you. It's not the best thing to say, but it's basically telling the player that he needs you to do something in order for you to continue the mission. And that's going to be to use the ability terminal over there. And so on the ability terminal, we only want this active when Orion Ferret directs the player over here. So once again, we will come over to our level starter, which is in the hangar bay. New logic connection on catalyze. And we're into the 34-minute mark here. I told you this was going to be a little bit longer episode today, but it's kind of hard to break up the flow of this logic, so hope you'll bear with me. All right, where are we at here? Here it is. So the level starter needs to deactivate the ability terminal, which means when Orion Ferret directs him over there, we need to activate that. And I think I'll do it off of this time delayer. So a new logic connection on the delay completed. When he tells the player, I have a mission for you, we'll go ahead and activate the ability terminal. And I also want to use that radar marker to direct the player there. So on that time delayer, new logic connection, when that delay is completed, we will activate this radar marker, which I haven't configured yet. Now the ability terminal properties, we're going to leave those set the way they are. If you wanted, you can change the character type to all, but I'll leave it set to tech. That might force you to have to swap out a Star Wars figure there. The radar marker, we're going to attach that to this locator. And we'll move the locator now underneath the ability terminal so that the radar marker shows up on the ability terminal. And for the properties on the radar marker, again, the beacon type is going to be a yellow arrow. Beacon location needs to be the locator. And the rest of the properties are fine. So that turned on the radar marker. And now the ability terminal, the player is going to come over here and hack this. And when they hack this, this is going to kick off the next part of the mission. The ability terminal is telling the player where the security droids are that the player needs to defeat in order to unlock the hangar bay. Those droids are going to appear in one of 5 locations. They're either going to appear over here at this locator, over at this one, over at this one, or that one, or this one. And to select which location they're going to be at, we're going to use this randomizer. And so when the player hacks the ability terminal, we want to do 2 things. We want to turn off our radar marker over here, and we want to invoke the randomizer. So on the ability terminal, a new logic connection, when the terminal is hacked, we will turn off this radar marker. And on the ability terminal, a new logic connection, when the terminal is hacked, we're going to invoke our randomizer. All right. Now, each of our 5 potential sets of security droids, as I said earlier, have 3 controls. We have the locator, we have the enemy wave generator, and a radar marker. You're going to configure all 3 of these controls the exact same way for each of those 5 sets. I'm only going to show you this one set. You can do the other 5 yourself. So on this set, we're going to do a new locator connection on the enemy wave generator. We're going to set the spawn location to be that locator. And then we're going to come down and configure the wave. And I'll do this for you since we're right here. We're going to set this to be the B2 battle droid. And then we're going to set the count on this to be 5. And then we'll set the properties like we have for all of the others. So take the generation delay to 0, disable generation effects. Okay. On the radar marker, you're going to do a new actor connection. Connect that to your enemy wave generator as your actor. And under the properties for this, you're going to set the beacon type to be a yellow arrow. That'll put a yellow arrow on all of those enemies. And the beacon location will be the connected actor. Okay? Make those same connections for these 3 controls and the 3 controls over there, and the 3 controls over there, and the 3 controls over there. You're connecting this radar marker up to that enemy wave generator, that enemy wave generator up to that locator, and configuring those just like I did with these 3. So these are 3 separate controls, okay? And those are 3 separate controls and those. So you'll set all of those up the same way. On your randomizer, you're going to invoke one of those sets of controls. And the way you're going to do that is with a couple of logic connections for each random trigger. So on the randomizer, a new logic connection on random trigger 1, we're going to come to the enemy wave generator for this first set and generate the wave. New logic connection for random trigger 1. Turn on the radar marker for that set. Activate. Okay? So each random trigger needs to do 2 things. That one turned on those 2. Random trigger 2 will invoke these 2. So generate that wave and turn on its radar marker. New logic connection, random trigger 2. Turn on its radar marker, and so on. Okay? So you'll connect random trigger 3 for this up to the enemy wave generator and radar marker out here. You'll connect up random trigger 4 to these 2 controls, random trigger 5 to these 2 controls. All right. And that will instantiate or generate the enemies for one of those sets. Now each of these sets is going to work the same way, okay? So on the enemy wave generator, you're going to do 2 things. First thing you're going to do is a new logic connection. When the wave is defeated, turn off its radar marker. And a new logic connection when the wave is defeated, input into this logic gate. And by inputting into that logic gate, you're going to save a few connections. All right, so each enemy wave generator needs to do 2 things. Turn off its radar marker, input into this logic gate. Make those same connections for these 2 controls. So this one needs to turn off its radar marker, needs to input into that logic gate, and do that for those set of controls, and these set of controls. Okay? And then at this point, this logic gate drives the next step of the mission. And what we want to do is we want to put the key out here and turn on the camera so the player knows where to find it. I originally tried to use the loot drop manager, which worked. The problem is the collectible tracker doesn't recognize collectibles that are placed with the loot drop manager. So that kind of stinks. So that's why we're doing it with this replayer. So on the replayer, we're going to do the playback interval, set that to 0. And then we're going to come out of the editor. We're going to step on our replayer. Just like before, I'm going to press B to start recording. Step off. And then in the Gameplay Toys drawer, we're going to scroll to the right and look for that Kiln keycard. Do-de-do-de-do-de-do. We should be getting close. Here it is. Okay, so we're going to place this out here. This is kind of centrally located. I really would have liked the enemies to drop this, but since I have no control over that, we'll place this out here like that. Then exit out of the editor. We'll step on our replayer again. Press B to stop recording, A to clear. Alright, so the logic gate here, new logic connection on output. We want to do a playback on our replayer. That'll put the key into the toy box. And then we're going to do a new logic connection on the logic gate on output. We're going to turn on this target camera so the player can see where the key is, so they know where to find it. We'll activate that. And the properties on this, we're going to turn on define duration. 5 seconds should be enough. These are fine. Glow through is off. Camera target needs to be the connected locator. The rest of the properties are fine. So it'll automatically turn itself off after 5 seconds. And it's looking right at this locator, which means it's looking right at the key that's sitting here. So then the player runs and picks it up, and when they do, this collectible tracker will be triggered. So on the collectible tracker, we'll set the properties with the collectible type set to the Kiln keycard. And if you want, you can show it on the radar. I don't think you really need that because that's why we have the target camera there. And so on the collectible tracker, this is what's going to allow them to unlock that force field and get access to the hangar. And so on the collectible tracker, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to turn on this trigger area over here at the force field, which means we need this off by default. Because when the player leaves this hangar bay, we don't want them doing this. So on the level starter, a new logic connection on catalyze. We will deactivate that trigger area. So on our collectible tracker, we'll turn that back on. So a new logic connection when the final collectible is collected. And there's only one. Come over here to our trigger area and activate that. Next thing we want to do is put the Falcon back into the toy box. So on the collectible tracker, a new logic connection when the final collectible is collected. We're going to come over to our second vehicle summoner, and under Rise Against the Empire, we'll generate the Millennium Falcon. That will put it at this locator with the Falcon facing out, ready for launch. On the collectible tracker, we want to guide the player in that direction, and so we're going to use another radar marker to do that. Okay, and that's going to be this one with a dynamic trigger. So on this radar marker, new locator connection, connect that up to this locator. We're going to set the properties on this once again with the beacon type as a yellow arrow. And we're almost done for the day. I know this is a long episode, but so we're going to set that up like that. We're also going to connect our dynamic trigger up to that same locator. This will let the player or the toy box know that the player has reached this location. And so when they get to the Falcon, we'll kick off the logic for patch 4, which we're going to do next time. But on the properties for this, target needs to be the locator. And the trigger distance on this one, we're going to set to 16, because the Falcon's kind of big. Alright, so on our collectible tracker, new logic connection when the final collectible is collected, and they've got that key card. We'll come turn on the radar marker over here to let them know they need to return to the hangar. And we also want to turn on this dynamic trigger, which means we want it off by default. So new logic connection on the level starter on catalyze. We'll turn this off. So when the toy box loads, that'll be off. And it won't do anything until the collectible tracker turns it on. So on the collectible tracker, new logic connection, when the final collectible is collected, we'll turn on that dynamic trigger. Okay. And now when the player enters this dynamic trigger, this will take the force field down. So new logic connection when entered by player any. We're going to clear this replayer. And I also want to play a sound effect. So a new logic connection when entered by player any. Come over to our sound effect generator. And oh, there it is. I was looking at the diagram. So under the general category, we've got to scroll down almost all the way to the bottom. We're looking for the power down sound. Power down. Okay. And then we only want to do this once. So on that trigger area, new logic connection when entered by player any, we'll come over to this logic gate and input, and a new logic connection on the logic gate on output. We'll deactivate that trigger area again. Alright, so that gets the player in here, and I think this is probably a good stopping point for today. Again, this is going to kick off the next set of logic for patch 4, but don't have time to do that today. We are out of time for this episode. So that's it for most of the main mission logic in the city. Next time we'll finish the main mission logic by hooking up the Creativitoys we need for patch 4, where the players finally acquire the TIE fighters. Thank you for watching and sticking with me through this long episode. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done that already, so you don't miss the next episode. I've also got logic diagrams on my blog. The link's in the video description. That's all for me today. See you next time.